It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. It's a special week, Foxy. 2-1 this week. Because of traveling on Monday to the tournament in the Bahamas, where the Zags will play 3 games in 3 days. We are recording Friday morning. Monday morning, Friday morning this week. Foxy, double duty. Are you up for this?
I think so. I got a really good night's rest, buddy. I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's run through some things real quick. We'll talk about the Bahamas tournament quite a bit. We're going to talk about San Diego State quite a bit. That was a big win on the road for the Zags. No new polls, obviously, since it's not Monday. The AP poll comes out every Monday, but the Zags are number 3 there, number 4 in the coaches poll. A couple of power rankings. ESPN has them at number 2. I believe CBS Sports put them up at number 1, which kind of runs counter to their top 25 and 1. I think they're 5 or 6 there. So Zags on the move up. Lenardi has another ESPN bracketology out where the Zags are the 1 seed in the West, would open in Seattle. Fellow number 1 seeds, Kansas, UConn, and Auburn. St. Mary's receives one of the last byes in that bracket. San Diego State, next 4 out. And then you've got Arizona's a 4 seed, possible matchup at the battle for Atlantis. Baylor is a 3. Kentucky's a 3. That's coming up in Seattle in a week or 2 after the tournament. And then Indiana is a 6. That's a possible second round matchup in the Bahamas. Obviously that sets up as a pretty big tournament coming up in the Paradise Island. I did try to ask Mark about it and the possibility of playing Tommy Lloyd, his former longtime assistant, and couldn't even get to the end of the question. Huey offered a response early and said, try not to look ahead. Every time you do that in the tournament format, something doesn't go the way you think. So he's just focusing on West Virginia, that opener, right out of the gate. And probably a good idea. You can get to game 2, game 3 when they come. So, Foxy, let's go back to San Diego State, Viejas Arena. Packed to the rafters, loud, tough place to play. Zags win it by 13 points. I was kind of struck by a couple of things. I didn't think the Zags played all that great necessarily. I thought they played fine, played well, did play very well defensively for the most part. But you would not, that game would not come across as Baylor, where they did everything right and won by 38. This one was a battle. They were a double-digit lead most of the time, at least 8-12, something in there in the second half, and kind of held them off. But what I thought they did better than anything they did was they played with some force. They played physical. They held their ground. They won the boards, which I thought was huge.
Mm-hmm.
They won the second chance points, which you do that against San Diego State. That's kind of one of the tenets of that program. And I think to pull that off is a large reason why the Zags won. What'd you see?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously San Diego State's not whole, but that's a really difficult place to play. To a road win like that is something that you don't scoff at, and I think that's going to look like a much better win as we get deeper into the year. And San Diego State not only gets whole, gets guys back from injury, but has some time to let a lot of these new faces kind of come together. They're just too well coached, and they've got. They're too good defensively. They're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
I think you hit it right on. I think you hit it perfect there, Jim. Gonzaga won because of their size. I thought they played really tough and physical, particularly around the basket. Gonzaga struggled from 3, only 5 of 20 and 1 of 9 in the second half, but shot better than 50% around the rim. And that's a very good San Diego State team around the basket. They got real legit length and real legit shot blockers. Yeah. And so to shoot that clip, I thought was really impressive. And they got to the line. I mean, they shot 27 of 31 from the free throw line. So, I mean, what is that? That's a plus 13 free throw attempt advantage. But, San Diego State only got called for one more foul than Gonzaga. It wasn't as if Gonzaga had 10 extra fouls to play with. So I was really impressed with what they did around the rim. But when we're looking at guys and how they played, I mean, we got to start with Graham Ike, clearly best game of the year by a wide margin. Really looked like the Graham of last year. I don't think you can say enough about him. In just 20 minutes, 23 points, 9 rebounds, nearly gets a triple double. And efficient from the field and the free throw line. 7 of 9 from the field, 9 of 11 from the free throw line. Basically sealed the win, I thought, along with Nembhard in that second half. And it's the bench. The depth is what I think. You saw the depth in its full capacity against San Diego State.
Yeah.
Stromer, Huff, and Greg just really, really impactful. 20 points, 13 rebounds. Those three, only one turnover. Stromer basically played the entire second half, and he didn't come out of the game once he came in. And I thought his defensive, he was so disruptive defensively. I thought it was clearly his best game of the year as well. So, Ike Nembhard, I've started saying, when you've got 2 All-American caliber players at the 1 and the 5, that's an excellent place to start your roster construction. And then now with the depth they have, because the truth is, Ajayi, Huff, or rather Ajayi, Hickman, and Battle didn't play great against San Diego State. And quite frankly, Michael hasn't had, the type of numbers we maybe would have expected. He's not shooting the ball as well as he certainly did at Pepperdine. That depth kind of helps absorb that in a way that they certainly didn't have last year, and I don't think it have had for a number of years. So I just thought it was a really impressive win, and I think it's going to be a win that's going to be considered one of their better wins as we get into March.
Yeah, as I was watching it, I was thinking, man, this would have been great if it was a month later, because you probably have, Reese Waters back in the lineup. Miles Bird played, but clearly was not, right from his, I think he had an ankle injury. He played a lot of minutes. I don't think he scored in like 22 minutes, and then he left with cramps in the second half. Mm-hmm. He wasn't at his best. When those two are in there, and they have the big kid in the middle, the 7-footer, they've got good guards. They got a kid, Nick Boyd, from Florida Atlantic, where John Jacobs is now, the former Zag assistant. He had 23, I think, against the Zags. He hit threes, plays with a ton of poise. BJ Davis, another guard, had 15. They've got I think when they're whole, they were going to do what they always do. They're going to win 25 games. They're going to be right there in the Mountain West. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament. Now, I don't know if the NCAA selection committee pays that much attention to where they'll give Gonzaga full credit, like it was a full roster when it comes down to it at the end of the year, or if they kind of do a little minus and subtraction because they didn't have Reese Waters and Bird wasn't fully healthy. But either way, not many people win in that building. To get it done, and you mentioned it, the Zags, Graham Ike, Ryan Nembhard, point guard, center. Yeah, it's like, to me, it's like baseball. When you're strong up the middle, catcher, pitcher, shortstop, center fielder, or football where your offensive line is just nails and you've got a quarterback. Nembhard is a serious quarterback now. He is on a roll. People, you have to think this is one of the better stretches you've ever seen from a point guard at Gonzaga, just because the numbers are through the roof. He had a couple turnovers later in that game, but he came back against in their next game, and 10-7. I think he had one turnover in that one. His numbers are off the charts, playing at such a high level. The combination with Ike and Huff, and I wrote about it a little today.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
it's 28, 29, 30 a night. Then you throw in Ismaila's numbers off the bench, the 7-footer. They're over 30 a game out of one spot, and the minutes are almost exactly 5 games, 200 total minutes. I think it's 199 minutes that those guys have played combined. So they're coming in and out for each other a lot. There can't be too many programs that can enjoy that luxury where you got 2 guys who go score 25 on a given night. You've got Hunter Dickinson at Kansas. You've got Kalkbrenner at Creighton. The kid at Auburn, Broome. Those guys are on all the All-American teams and get all the publicity. But to bring in 2, to rotate them, stay healthy, stay fresher. Both lefty, different in that regard. That's a luxury not many have across the country.
No, it's. I mean, this is going to sound kind of basic, but it's just cool to see this two-headed monster. I mean, they both are different. Graham's older, has more experience. Probably if you're picking one to finish a game, regardless, you're not knowing how the game went, you probably pick Graham just because of that experience, and he's further ahead defensively. Although Braden's made incredible strides, but I mean, just those 2 are averaging combined 36 minutes, 28, nearly 29 points, 10 rebounds, shooting over 50% from the field, and combined are 3 of 10 from the 3-point line. And they've gotten, Graham gets to the line in a way Braden doesn't. Graham's gotten the line 32 times here to start the year, which is, effectively a third of the free throws Gonzaga's had this season. They're just going to split minutes all year. And as a result, to your point, they're probably not going to get the shine and the attention that some of these other high-level centers are going to get. But each one on their own is at that level. And when you combine them, the production you're getting from that spot is unheard of, to be perfectly honest. I mean, go find, other than Zach Edey, I suppose, the last year or a couple of years, you're not getting 28-10 at high efficiency from the center spot. And they can keep them both fresh throughout the game, which I think is a really important part of what they're doing on their front line. Is none of those guys are going to get extended minutes. They can play as hard as they can for the stretches they're out there. They come out, and there's somebody of equal talent and ability coming in behind them. There's just zero drop-off. And I think you could start making that case now with the way Dusty's playing on the perimeter. But certainly there's no question on that front line. They're all different, which is unique. But from a production and talent perspective, there's no drop-off. So you've always got a starter level, high-end starter on the floor at 2 spots, at the 4 and the 5. It's just something you don't see really at any level, but certainly college. I'm hard pressed to think of that.
Yeah. Moving on, Long Beach State came to town, not with Dan Monson as the head coach. He's now at Eastern, but the Beach, as they're known now, no longer the 49ers, came in 1-3. They left 1-4. They got beat by 43 by the Zags. Again, the Zags were workmanlike, did everything, I think they followed their plan and played fine and all that, but didn't play crazy good. Their shooting percentage was down a little bit. At one point, they were up 33-9, I believe.
Yep.
Not 12 minutes into the game, and somebody on Twitter replied to one of my tweets that it was really a shaky first half when I tweeted the score at halftime. And I'm like, man, this is a tough grading scale out there. They had 33 points in 7 minutes. I don't know what that translates to, but they finished with 40. They did slow down a little bit. They had a little bit of a defensive lag there, but again, you win without your fastball a lot of times. Every night's not Baylor. And most games are going to be like this, where you got to play with your B plus A minus instead of your straight A. So they got the job done. Impressive what they did again inside. Those guys, 27 or 8 points. Nemhard did what he does. You hit on Stromer too. He's had a very nice stretch here, both ends of the floor. He's hitting the 3 here and there. He's guarding extremely well. And that's important because they start the 3 guard lineup with Battle, Nemhard, and Hickman. Stromer's the first guy in and can kind of play different positions as well. Same with Battle. He has had a nice stretch there. He played well again. in that game. The bench played well. I mean, these are all the things we're used to seeing. I thought they handled a team that has some physical ability, especially in the second half, got the rebounds squared away. That was stinging them in the first half. They shut down the best player, scorer, Devin Askew, who's, Kentucky, Texas, Cal 4 years before he came to Long Beach State. So not much to complain about in that game, that the Zags took care of business again.
Yeah, they didn't finish the first half well, and that I think kind of changed the perception of how the first half of the game went. I give a lot of credit to Long Beach. I thought that they kept playing hard, and Askew hit a really difficult layup towards call it 5 minutes left in the second half. That seemed to kind of get him going. He hit a couple shots, and they've got some good play. I mean, they're going to be good at that level. You can see how that team is going to come together. But look, that's just it's a game you're going to win. Speaking of Dusty, because Huff scores so much, it's kind of the easy story, I think, or easy thing to call out is, wow, what a talented kid. The improvement Dusty's made is remarkable, and quite frankly, probably not that surprising. I mean, a pretty well-regarded kid at a high school. He does have some natural gifts. I mean, he is all a 6'6". He has really good length. He's an above-average athlete. He when he goes up to rebound, I mean, he's leaving the floor. I mean, and defensively is where he's really special. I mean, if you watch him play, he keeps guys in front. He can change directions defensively. He does a good job of defending without fouling. I think sometimes he gets called for stuff that's just really ticky-tack. He's taking care of the ball. I think 6 turnovers on the year. What do you have? 4 against Baylor?
Yeah.
4. He's been really good with the ball. 7 steals. He's shooting it at a high efficiency, 47% from 3, not forcing anything. And you can see that he is building a lot of equity with Mark. Mark, you can see it in the guy's career. If they're here long enough and they're here as freshmen, you can kind of see it turn in Mark's mind where, there's the challenge of being a young kid playing for a few. Then, if you're talented enough, you start getting some minutes, but there's just not a lot of forgiveness. You make a mistake or you miss a rotation or you're not playing well. There's just not the same equity and leash. But when that turns over, and you can see that with Dusty, if he does make a mistake, he's not looking at the bench anymore. Yeah. He gets to play through some of that stuff. And he's a big piece of what they're going to do. Because, I think part of the battle's been great, but the last couple games, he hasn't been very efficient. And I think Battle can get frustrated. He can get down on himself. And that's something to watch, I think, looking at, some body language stuff against San Diego State, and certainly against Long Beach State being there the other night. He can get into himself. And I think, it's not a pressure so much as it's a disappointment that then impacts that next play. You talk about that all the time in athletics. Next play. Don't linger on what just happened, good or bad. Move forward, focus forward. They need Dusty to be at a super high level because if they have a situation where Caleb's really struggling, I don't know if the solution is to go big and put Ajayi at the 3, right? I think the solution now is Dusty, you're a starter level guy. Come on in. You make shots, you guard. He's very low maintenance. They don't have to feed him. I just could not be more impressed. I mean, that's kind of where I'll leave it, Jim. I just think he's been that good to start the year.
Yeah, noticeable improvement, both sides of the ball. Same thing with Huff. Huff is guarding better. His kind of a show and recovery has been better. He's holding his ground better. He's gotten thicker now. He's not a small guy by any stretch, and he kind of carries whatever he is, 240 or. Go ahead. Yeah.
One of the biggest things for a big is you have to like contact, and part of getting to that place is not just your mentality, but it's like having the strength to absorb it, but more importantly, to deliver it. And it felt like last year he was waiting to get hit. He's waiting for the guy to come down the lane and try to hit him before, to get the rebound, or he's defensively on the low block and he's waiting to absorb the offensive play. And now he's delivering contact. He's initiating that kind of thing. He enjoys it in a way I don't think he did last year. That's a big part of that transition around the basket. And you can see that he's stouter around the basket. And to your point about hedging, he just clearly has a better understanding of rotations, how to hedge. Part of it is depending on what they're doing, if they have their bigs hedge really hard, meaning ball screen, my guy sets the screen. I'm the big guy. I'm kind of trying to blow up the ball handler by really coming out aggressively and forcing him to dribble away from the basket. When I've done that part of my job, the next part of my job is turning around, sprinting, and knowing where I'm going.
Yeah.
And it felt like last year he would do the first part, turn around, and not know where to go. And now you can see it. I mean, he's so decisive recovering off of those hedges. He just has a better feel now and understands, okay, this is part of, I do this, I need to go there. It's been, there's just no drop off regardless of who's on the floor defensively. And they can touch their top end defensive level regardless of who's in the rotation.
Yeah.
Think about it. Most teams, you got to have the right personnel in to be at your best defensively. I don't think they have that problem. I think regardless of who's on the floor, those top 8, if they're playing at their best, they're an elite level defensive team.
Yeah, same thing with Ben Gregg. I mean,
yeah.
He can guard and rebound. He can switch. He does all those things as well. Well, let's move on to the battle for Atlantis in the Bahamas. Wednesday, the Zags line up against West Virginia in their opener there. That's West Virginia coached by Darian DeVries. He was at Drake. He took Drake to the NCAA tournament 3 times in 6 years, got this job. I think he's second year now there. Did a great recruiting job. He brought his kid in, and this kid can play. Tucker is his name. He's not, I think he's like a 6'6", kind of wing, big guard type player. He averaged 18 a game for 3 years at Drake. He's at 13.5 for the season with West Virginia. Really a curious stat. 41% shooter on threes, just under 30 on twos. You don't see that very often. But very comfortable.
70% of his shots from the 3-point line, so I think we know he's a 3-point shooter.
Yeah, but usually you don't fall off the map on the percentage end. But,
that's true.
I'm not even sure if he'll be job number 1 because they've got another transfer. I think he played at East Carolina and then Oklahoma State most recently. 6'3" guard Javon Small, 15.5, shoots at 43.5 on threes. And one more guy, Jonathan Powell, he shoots at over 40% on threes. So you get this impression that they love the 3 ball and can really shoot it with those 3 guys, and they can't. The rest of the numbers drop off with the players that start and the ones that come off the bench. But those 3 guys alone, that's like having 3 snipers out there. I would think the 3-point line will be a big deal in this game. And the Zags are coming off a game, I think it was 2 for 20 or something for Long Beach the other night.
Yep.
So obviously did well in that capacity. What do you think? What do you think the challenge is facing West Virginia?
I mean, the challenge is certainly guarding the perimeter. This is not a West Virginia team that's big. They don't have a lot of size. It reminds me a bit of. I'm drawing a blank on who they were playing.
UMass Lowell?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, UMass Lowell had good guards. This is a better team in West Virginia. So it's going to be a bit of Gonzaga is going to win because they're just going to dominate the glass, and their size is going to be a problem. West Virginia's got really good skill and talented guys on the perimeter. They'll get into you. They do a good job defending. Small's averaging something like 3.5 steals a game. That's going to be a fun matchup to see him, match up with Ryan, just because he'll get into Ryan, and Ryan's so good. You don't anticipate he's going to have too much of an issue, but he's going to make Ryan work. I don't think Ryan's going to feel real comfortable bringing the ball up the floor as much as he might on most nights. So it's a solid West Virginia team that had a down year last year. Obviously, there's a coaching change. They've got a lot of new personnel. It's a game Gonzaga should win, but you're playing a high major program, from the Big 12 again. And Gonzaga's had a lot of success, but this is by no means a team that's going to be. It's not going to be a cakewalk. They get a lot of threes up. I mean, they take 29 threes a game. And they're good defensively. They're holding teams to around 36% from the field. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. But my takeaway is Gonzaga's better. And if they're right and dialed in, I think this is a game they're going to win.
Yeah. That second game looming, it could be Indiana. Obviously, Umar Ballo, 7-footer, began his career at Gonzaga. I think he had to sit out his first year, if I remember right, for NCAA clearinghouse reasons. Then he played some in the second season with the Zags. Was kind of one of the first bigs off the bench on that team. But then as the season went on, actually Ben Gregg kind of rose up. That was when Benny made his charge into the rotation and stayed there. And Umar relocated to Pac-12 with Tommy Lloyd, the man responsible for recruiting him, and had a couple of great years for Tommy at Tucson. I think he was all Pac-12 contender for the player of the year in that league, and now is at Indiana. Watched them last night against North Carolina Greensboro. I've seen them a couple times now, and they're undefeated. And we're presuming they win. They've got to win an opening game too. So, like Huey said, don't jump ahead. Well, we ignore that pretty well.
Well, we get to do that as much as we want.
I know, and we have free license. So, but presuming it's Indiana, they've got a couple of nice players. They also have Miles Rice from Washington State who transferred there. They've got a kid named Mbaka, I think it is, who can really score it.
He's good.
He is a very good scorer. He is their top player, but Umar's putting up his numbers as always. Rice is helping him. That will be an interesting matchup. I don't think Indiana has hit their top gear. I think they're kind of in that fourth, looking for overdrive, but you can see they have a lot of ability. They're going to be matchup issues, especially with Mbaka. If it's Gonzaga, Indiana, might see Ben Gregg and Umar playing each other on the floor. That could be a heck of a match, especially for a second round game. That's usually kind of a final. What do you make of that if it comes about?
If they play Indiana, that's going to be the best team they would have played up to that point in the year. I'm telling you that. I think they're better than Baylor. They're, to your point, earlier in the year, ranked mid-teens. I think they're better than that. Indiana's done. They haven't had the success that they certainly want up to this point. And remind me, their coach. Why am I drawing a blank?
Woodson. Mike Woodson.
Woodson, thank you. Yeah, since Woodson came out of the NBA, but they're a lot like Gonzaga in that they have a lot of homegrown guys, and then they have supplemented their roster with transfers and guys who fit. You think about. I was just
going to say they fit their needs.
Right. Ballo, true center, and Omar's he's had a fabulous career. I mean, all Pac-12 twice. I mean, he's a great college player. The way he plays may not be for everybody, but he's kind of burly and he's got plenty of size. Not the most graceful guy in the world, but he's a handful. I mean, he has this. He's bigger than any center Gonzaga has. As big and tough as Ike is. Omar's just as big and tough. I mean, that's going to be an interesting matchup, right? Graham is more skilled, but Ballo's he's a mountain. He's a lot like what Karnowski was with that unique size, and he occupies space. You can't go through him, right? Rice is a really, really good point guard, a lot like Ryan. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. It doesn't have the assist numbers that Ryan does, but takes care of the ball, gets them in their stuff. He's a better shooter, 46%, being more consistent with that. And then they brought in Carlisle out of Stanford,
Yeah.
another guard who's been solid for them, doesn't score at such as high level, hasn't shot it that well this year, but it's the guys they're bringing back to me that are really impressive. This Mbako kid is 6'9" and can score anywhere on the floor. I mean,
He is good.
he's shooting 54% from three on four threes taken a game. It's early in the year. He shot 32% last year. So, to see how real that is, but he's coming in shooting it at a super high clip. He's a good athlete. Renault, is that how you say it? Renault, Malik
Yeah,
Renault,
pretty good too. Yeah.
third year at Indiana, played a ton last year, 15 points a game. Not shooting as well this year, but has shown in the past he can knock down the 3-point shot. Bryson Tucker is an interesting freshman for them. Not sure how much of an impact he's going to have against a team like Gonzaga being as young as he is, but early in the year, 20 minutes a game, 6'7". They've got real size. Gonzaga's one of their qualities that we've talked about this is how big Gonzaga is. Indiana is just as big. I really want to see that matchup because I think it'll be a great game.
Yeah.
It's two teams that really don't have like a surefire pro per se. I don't think there's anybody on either roster you're looking at that's a top 10 pick, or maybe you might have some guys that are borderline first round picks. But what they have is you're going to have a game where everybody, for the most part, everybody on the floor is going to be a high level college basketball player. That will be a ton of fun to watch. I hope we see that matchup.
Yeah, another matchup that I think a lot of people want to see. Gonzaga, Arizona. Again, we're presuming a bunch here because they've got tough matchups along the way. The Zags have got tough matchups. Maybe everybody but Tommy and Mark would want to see that, but they might.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
They might excuse that, being that to do it. Hey, they could get upset. Maybe they meet in the game where you lose your first two games, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the far better chance, obviously, is that they play for the title. At least when you seed it and bracket it, that's how it's supposed to come out. Will it play out like that? Maybe not. Probably not. Who knows? But if that happens, man, that's a great matchup too. You're talking about another team with legit size. Doesn't play as inside out maybe as Indiana and Gonzaga do, especially Gonzaga. Old school Gonzaga, throw it into the post or run pick and roll and hit the cutter. But terrific guard line for Tommy down there. He's got a National Player of the Year candidate in Caleb Love. He's got Lewis. He's got the kid from Alabama, Bradley, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a nice team as well. I think they dropped one. They play Duke tonight. We'll get to see kind of where they're get their temperature going down to the Bahamas, see where they're at. But they do have a loss, got thumped at Wisconsin. But he's got a lot of pieces there as well. The handshake would be interesting. I think they'd probably hug. I don't think there'd be a handshake. They were together a long time. I think once that ball goes up, they'll both do what they've got to do to win that game. How much do you want to see Gonzaga, Arizona on the final day?
Oh, I absolutely want to see that. I mean, there's part. I think knowing played for Mark and knowing Tommy, there is part of me that will probably not enjoy it as much as I would otherwise. But then, the other part of me is like, that's ridiculous. That'd be just a fun game to watch, and I'd rather see it in something like this than say the Elite Eight.
Yeah, true.
Kind of just let's rip the Band-Aid off. Because it'll be a bigger deal for everybody other than those two.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean it's not a big deal. So it'd be kind of fun to get it done in a preseason tournament or a non-conference tournament like this. But look, Arizona, Tommy, a lot like Gonzaga, has been really good at the roster construction piece of it. They'll play fast. I mean, they're top 10 in the country in scoring. But interestingly enough, I mean, they are a beast on the glass. Yeah. They're right now the top rebounding team in the country. They get something like 22 offensive rebounds a game. And what they don't have necessarily top end big guys. We have good players. I mean, Townsend's a really good guy. He's played in college for a long time. But what they do have, they have size. I mean, they'll bring in true 7-footers, and sometimes just being big is good enough. They just make life difficult, and they have top end scorers. I mean, Caleb Love can score with the best players in the country. He's had a slow start to the year, just shooting 11 points a game, but shooting a sub 30% from three. But still, everyone knows Caleb Love can fill up the basket. That's not going to be his story this year. Bradley's the top end recruit, out of Alabama, transferred over from Alabama. KJ Lewis was a really good freshman for them last year. He seemed to make that freshman to sophomore jump. And they just have really good depth. I mean, I'm counting it now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys playing over 16 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Tommy leans into that depth. So, I mean, that would be, that'd be on Friday. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah. Final day. Yeah.
So don't tell my wife, but I might have to go, quote unquote, into the office that day.
Yeah.
And magically end up somewhere downtown. I'll work from my phone and watch the game.
Hey, good call though. I think you're right, to meet in a tournament as opposed to trying to get to a Final Four through each other. I think would be a little less stressful for the two principals involved, head coaches. So hopefully that's what happens. We get to see those games, those matchups. One more topic we need to hit, Fox. Kind of the topic of that I feel is one of the biggest things with Gonzaga this year. Obviously, they can score it. They've got depth, all those things. They have made, I believe, real improvement defensively, especially if you watch the USC exhibition. It's an exhibition. Never throw all your eggs in the basket watching an exhibition. When it doesn't count on your record, it's like spring baseball games. It's like preseason NFL. I can't remember a single score or game from those. I covered NFL preseason games. Can't remember a play even from those. But there was some defensive issues there that really showed up. Guarding one-on-one, covering three balls, getting collapsed and trying to recover, not in time. There have been very few breakdowns for the Zags here the last 2-3 games after Arizona State. Arizona State was a kind of a step back, I thought, defensively, but they've got guys and they can score. I mean, you're not going to shut people down. And this team is not a shutdown defense, I would say. But I think it's keep them in front, challenge the three, don't get worked on the glass. Those are the things they're doing at a pretty high rate right now. And that's maybe the best sign of all for what Gonzaga could do if that continues.
Yeah, I mean, early returns, they've guarded the 3-point line well. I mean, teams are just not shooting it well from behind the 3-point line. I agree with you. When we've seen them at the top end of what they can be defensively, there's no doubt in my mind that they're a top 10 defensive team in the country. That when they're rotating the way that they've rotated for stretches in some of these games, they have defenders that all 8 guys can guard, different degrees. Braden, as much as he's improved, no one's looking at him as, some rim protector, but he's not a liability. I look at Dusty. I think Dusty's turned himself into a high-end perimeter defender. Caliph, when he's dialed in with his size, can do the same. Ryan's steady from the point guard spot. Yada, on and on down the list. They remind me. I think the analogy you talked about, just maybe not. They don't have this. It doesn't wow you on that end of the floor. If I think about boxing, they're not a knockout fighter. They're not knocking guys out. They're going 12, 13 rounds, and they're just leaning on you the whole time.
Yeah, they're kind of peppering you a little bit. Yeah,
but they're leaning on you. They're wearing you down. You feel like by the end of the fight, it's over because they've sapped the energy from you with just the consistency of what they can do on that end of the floor. And they don't have a high-end shot blocker. Their steal numbers aren't through the roof, but they just have the ability to keep you in front. They rotate and they force you into difficult shots. If you're going to score on Gonzaga at a high level, you're going to have to make tough shots throughout the course of the game. They rarely give up the cheap two, the wide open three. They just consistently and methodically and just it's just a labor to try to play against them on your offensive end. And that's the analogy I would use. I just think about growing up and watching guys like Holyfield and Lewis, and just, I mean, they'd have the knockout from time to time, but these fights always went the distance, it felt like, and by the end of it, they win by 8 points because just wore the other guy down. And Foreman. So that's the analogy I would use. They don't have that pop to their defense, but they're just good, and they don't have a weakness, and it makes life really difficult for you on the other end.
Yeah, want to see them line up against very skilled bigs like they did with Baylor. That kid I thought was very good. Norchad, Omier. Might see that with Ballo down in the Bahamas. That would be very interesting to see how the Zags would handle that. Well, that's going to do it for today. As we said, it's a bonus week. It's a 2-for-1 week this week. We had the Monday show, and now this is Friday. So we will not be on with you come Monday. I'll be in the air, but we'll be on the following Monday. So you come back and check us out then. We'll have the full report on the Bahamas, on and off the court, Foxy. And we'll see how that tournament turns out. You can tell where our hopes are and who matches up, but that's all to be decided on the court. You can catch this on the Spokesman-Review website, spokesman.com. I'll post it there. YouTube, Apple, Spreaker, I think Spotify. We're on all the spots you find your podcast, so come check us out. Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. We'll see you not Monday, but the following Monday. Have a good week.